We are joined now by the great Brent Hubbs of VolQuest.com, and Brent is back home from Orlando, and the Vols, a very happy group of people because we saw the debut as the starter of Nico Iamaleava, and it could not have gone any better. A 35-0 win where Nico ran for 3 touchdowns, threw very efficiently against a very good defense. And Brent, how happy were the Vols, coaches, players, fans leaving Orlando?
Well, I think excited about happy and obviously excited about the future, Andy. And I think it's beyond the number, the numbers that he put up, and they were solid numbers. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he hit a big, a big long one or anything like that, but his legs were important. But the bigger thing was he didn't have to call a timeout. There wasn't a delay game penalty. They played with tempo. Everybody seemed to be on the same page. The game never seemed too fast for him pre-snap, post-snap, or anything like that. And, I think when you talk about good quarterback play, and we all know how vital it is in college football and the NFL, it starts first and foremost with game management. And I thought Nico managed the game really well. Did he have the wow throw? Maybe he didn't have the wow throws where you're like, holy, what a, laser rocket, whatever. But the game never seemed too fast. The moment never seemed too fast for him, which I think for Tennessee fans is a really nice starting point for 2024.
Well, we talked about the pressure he'd be under and also the issue of facing such a good defense in your first start. But I do think Tennessee's defense helped out. Iowa's offense and its usual futility helped out. But once Tennessee got that pick in the end zone, you were like, okay, I don't know that Iowa's going to get back here all day. It probably did give them some comfort in terms of just what they could do with Nico.
Yeah, I think it did. And they got the ground game going a little bit there, which was important. And obviously the running game in Josh Heupel's system is really not talked about enough, probably in terms of its key to the offense's success. But they got that going. That's the most yards Iowa's given up all year on the ground. And I think that helped everything, going along. But again, I mean, Nico was under pressure. He was sacked 6 times. One, maybe 2 of those were on him, but the others were not. He did not have a ton of time out there, but he took care of the ball. I mean, you're sitting there with that game at 14-0, Andy, and you're going, the only way Tennessee loses is if Tennessee does something crazy. If they turn it over, you're loose with the football on a scramble and you get the ball knocked loose. If you're the quarterback or you're throwing up, in harm's way under pressure. And he just didn't do that. He managed the game. And I know that's such a bad word. And when you talk about quarterback play, but he really did. He was smart with the football all day long, which I don't think you see all the time with young quarterbacks, freshman quarterbacks. I don't think we've seen it the entire bowl season. There's been some freshmen out there who have had some moments where they're just freshmen with the football, and he didn't seem to have any of those.
And Dylan Sampson, who'd been pushing for this kind of role all season, got it, and 20 carries for 133 yards, pretty good.
It's the quietest 133 yards you'll ever see. Like, it's one of those deals where he popped a couple of runs for 15 yards. Hey, good run, whatever. And then you look up and it's like, okay, he's gone for 133. And there just wasn't, I mean, it was just really steady Eddie. And, I think Dylan is a guy who's got to continue to improve his pass pro. I think that's something that coming out of this game, you're reminded of. That's a continued area of growth for him. But he runs bigger than his body is. I think a great offseason for him in the weight room means the sky is, potentially the limit for him. They had him on a screen pass. If they hit the screen pass, it's a touchdown. I will be very anxious to see how they use Dylan Sampson in the passing game next year, because he's a much better receiver than Jalen Wright or Jabari Small is, who's been Tennessee's focal point at tailback for the last couple of years. How does Josh Heupel, Joey Halzle, and Nico incorporate the tailback, with the running back passing game or into the passing game? Going to be fun to watch in 24.
I'm going to tell you about Fanduel. They're the ones who give us all those lines. That 4.5-point Michigan favorite opening line, that's from Fanduel. FanDuel.com/Staples is how you sign up. And if you place a $5 bet, you get $150 in guaranteed bonus bets. Going to be some fun action on this game. You'll be able to bet it live. And of course, you've got the NFL, you've got the NBA, you've got college basketball. If they got a scoreboard, FanDuel probably is going to let you put some action on it. FanDuel.com/Staples. Sign up, place one $5 bet, and get $150 in guaranteed bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Staples. So we're going to be talking about Nico and that offense, I think, most of the offseason, but I imagine the NFL people are going to be focusing on James Pearce most of this offseason because he's going to be draft eligible after next season. He showed again why he might be Tennessee's best player.
Yeah, and the thing about James is, I mean, you look at his stat line and his 3 tackles, a sack, forced a fumble, interception, which is a good stat line, don't get me wrong. But when you watch the game, he affects the defense or affects the offense in so many different ways just because you have to find him and you have to be aware of him. You have to chip, you have to help. So much of your focus is there. It opens up guys for other opportunities. He affects the game much greater than his numbers show up. But I'm going to tell you what, in 7 defensive snaps, he turned a 14-0 game into a 28-0 game. And I've used this comparison because I think their body types are a little bit similar. He's got a little bit of Micah Parsons in him, you know, Andy, just in terms of his body type. But there's been a couple of plays this year that he's made. The pick 6 this year, or in this game, and he had another game earlier in the year. Maybe it's against A&M, I think it was, where he tackled Evan Stewart or somebody on a crossing deal that was like, how in the world do you at that size make that play? He can really play in space. He's not just a one-trick pony edge pass rush guy, which is why NFL scouts are foaming at the mouth at him.
Well, and I'm curious to see what happens with another offseason for him because he was a huge year 1 to year 2 jump. Now, I'd imagine there's probably not that much room between here and the ceiling, but there's still room, and it's gonna be fun to see what they do with him next year.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he's a guy that could move him around a little bit. I mean, you really could stand him up. You could blitz him in the A gap. They ran a lot of twists with him this year. He can speed rush. He plays the run a little better than I think people give him credit for because he plays with really good hands. He's pretty physical with his hands. He's got long arms. You put another 8 pounds on him and put him at 250 to 255. I tell you what, going to be a really fun player to watch play. The thing he's got to do is he's got to stay really focused because everybody's in his ear right now, right? I mean, it's going to be all the talk about how much you're going to make and where you're going to be drafted and all that kind of stuff. But he has set himself up for a potential great 3rd year in college football and a potential early call on draft night in the NFL draft because much like quarterbacks, offensive tackles, defensive coordinators, scouts in the NFL are looking for one thing, and that's the guy who can get to the quarterback, who can affect the game the way he can, makes him a really hot commodity. Going to be fun to watch.
You talk about James Pearce and putting on weight. I'm curious about Nico because he's so tall and lanky, but if you meet his family, they're big people. You know, his dad is 300 pounds plus.
Right.
It feels like as Nico fills out that his effectiveness as a runner becomes even more interesting. And especially after a game where he scored 3 touchdowns on the ground, to think if he does, physically mature a little bit, he's a true dual threat.
Yeah, and I think he's put on about 15 pounds since he's been at Tennessee, maybe 18 pounds, somewhere in that range. It doesn't really look like it because he's 6'6", as you mentioned. But when you watch him run, he's a little more slippery than you think. He had the one touchdown where he got popped really good at the goal line. Josh Heupel kind of met him about the hash marks and was kind of like, hey, that's great. But you know what? Let's throw that one there. Okay. We're trying to get it to tight end. If it's not there, you can throw that one away and we'll live to play another play. So how they use him in the run game, I think is going to be interesting. The first touchdown was a scheme play because I would seen him play 54 snaps and had no idea he could run a quarterback draw the way that he did. He's got a lot of burst, okay? There's a real acceleration to him, and I think that's what can make him a good running quarterback. That was something Hendon Hooker had. That wasn't Joe's greatest strength, right? Joe was a guy who had to get 3 or 4 steps in, Andy, before he got going. That's not the case with Nico.
Well, and I remember watching his high school film and being impressed by the fact, because he was, in high school 6'6", like 190. He was very thin, but was a physical runner even then. And you can imagine what he ultimately winds up being. We're probably talking about a 225, 230 pound guy. That if you already have that mentality, plus you're pretty fast, that makes things very interesting once you're at the next level.
Well, and the thing he does too, that I think his game will grow as it slows down a little bit. Now he took care of the ball yesterday, but the game was fast at times for him. I don't care what he says or anybody else says. It's just natural. But I think the thing that you look with him, he keeps his eyes downfield. He's kind of not one of those drop your head and run guys, like hey, I'm taking off and that's it. So, and I'm not calling him Patrick Mahomes, but we've seen this in the RPO game stuff. If you're a lineman, you probably aren't going to just take off downfield, because he could be a guy who looks like he's getting ready to take off and boom, might just dump it over the top of somebody or a little sidearm somebody to create an improv there. I just think everybody's got to be careful, including us, right? This time of year ago, it was the Joe Milton train was coming down the tracks, and here we are and all that stuff. So I want to pump the brakes myself a little bit on, okay, what's he going to be? It's going to be this, that, the other. But man, he was in total control yesterday. There's nothing about that you came out yesterday and went, man, what a cannon. What a physical play he made there. You came out of there and went, man, mentally, he looked like a veteran on the football field yesterday. And I think that's where you take a lot of encouragement moving forward if you're a Tennessee fan.
And I think, like you pointed out, just instinctively, his game more mirrors what Hendon Hooker brought to Tennessee than Joe Milton. Because if you said, what is the key difference between Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton, it's that Hendon had that improvisational skill that Joe maybe just didn't.
Yeah, and I think in this offense, there are going to be times, Andy, where a guy's just cut loose, right? I mean, they get you, right? So you're going to get a free runner at you, a free edge blitzer or something. Can you make a play off of that, whether it's with your arm, whether that's spinning out with your legs? What is that? Can you make that play there? Hendon Hooker was fantastic at it. Okay, we talked about that 2 years ago. I mean, heck, he made a play in the Florida game at the end of the first half. I'm still not sure how he made the improv there. Nico has that ability, okay, because everything's got a burst to it, right? There's a suddenness to it. He can stop on a dime. He's got a quick enough release. He can get it out if somebody's in his face. He makes quick decisions. He can accelerate quickly. There's a lot of things he can do that can get you out of trouble. And I think that's what Hendon did well. And I think that helps this offense really hum along. I know they can win with a variety of quarterbacks. Josh Heupel's stated that, and he's done that. But I think when you talk about prototypical, how do you make one up, whatever, this guy's got a lot of what you're looking for in that prototype.
Speaking of helping the offense, there was some news on Tuesday that sounds like it'll help the Tennessee offense tremendously. Bru McCoy, season ended prematurely because of a pretty nasty injury. He's coming back rather than go to the NFL.
Yeah, and I think, for Bru, it's a couple things. One, the NFL, I think, just would want to see him healthy. And I think to help his stock, he's going to have to show them that he's healthy over a longer period of time. And returning to college football made the most sense. He really likes it in Knoxville. Knoxville's been a great fit for him. He's been a great fit for the community and for the team, for the locker room. I think it's a great get for Tennessee. Nico said publicly at the bowl site he was recruiting Bru hard to come back. He wanted him back to make Bru feel really old. Nico has talked about how much he enjoyed watching Bru play in high school growing up because they're from California. And so now they're going to play together. He wants to play with him. They have a really good rapport. I think Bru helped Nico in his adjustment from the West Coast to Knoxville. I think the two have gotten along really well, and I think they will play off of each other well. And then you look at the receiver room and where they are, Andy. Mike Matthews is a 5-star athlete who's coming in, who did some really good things at the Under Armour deal and at bowl practice for Tennessee. You're talking about Braylon Staley, who's coming in as well. They bring in the Brazel kid from Tulane as a transfer. It's a pretty young room when you look at where they are. So to have a veteran who goes about his business as a pro every day on and off the field at 23 years of age, is a real nice comfort level for Josh Heupel in the locker room, in the meeting room, to help those young guys get ready to play.
Speaking of Josh Heupel, next time you see him, thank him for not kicking that last field goal, for letting the time run out, because on this show, we always pick the Iowa total, and it was 36.5 in this game, and that kept that score 35-0. So Josh Heupel, you've done a service to the listeners of this show.
There were some people in the stands who do not agree with your viewpoint on that, because there were a lot of people who had gone at that point, and Gaston Moore's throwing it, and I'm looking in the Iowa section, and there's not a ton of people gnashing teeth and pointing and screaming like, "Why are you still throwing it?" And then it got down there to a chance on 4th down. What are you going to do? You're going to go for it, or what? You're going to kick, or what? And there were literal cat calls from all around that stadium at Camping World Stadium going, "Kick the field goal! Kick the field goal!" Because some people had the over.
God, will they never learn? Will they never learn?
Do you not just love college football? I mean, your team got beat 35-0, and you're like, "Yeah, we've seen this offense, but hey, kick the field goal so I can hit it. It'll help the ride back home." You know what I mean?
It's like, just let us have this. It was unbelievable. Brent, thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.